the Reason Rally did inspire great things. This conference, I can say, was inspired by that Reason Rally, and the coalition I talked about earlier. That kind of stuff came out of the Reason Rally. So, I mean, I think everybody here owes you a debt of thanks for that, and so I just wanted to recognize that up here as well. Next up, we have Eliza Kashinsky. She is the Chief of Staff of the Secular Coalition of American Lives. Yeah.
I can still hear you though.
Testing. There we go. All right. Eliza is the Chief of Staff of the Secular Coalition for America. She provides the day-to-day management for the Secular Coalition's office, and she's come here today to talk to us about their state program. I mentioned a little bit earlier, and so please, everyone, welcome Eliza.
Hi. So thank you all for having me here to talk to you, and I also want to thank the organizers of this conference. It's really great to see so many people here, and they've done an excellent job. So thank you. As you just heard, because I was introduced, I'm Eliza Kashinsky. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Secular Coalition for America. I haven't been involved in the movement for nearly as long as a lot of the people you're going to hear speak today, such as our president, Herb Silverman, who's speaking later on today and is way in the back. So I'm going to start out a little bit with who I am. I'm a fourth-generation agnostic. My parents were agnostics. My father's parents were atheists. My great-grandparents were also non-theists. It may go back even further, but my genealogy skills are a little iffy. I was raised without religion, and it was a really great way to be raised. And I feel like my parents and my family were able to shelter me to a large degree from a lot of the discrimination and hardship people face growing up without God. When I took this job about 1.5 years ago, it was really amazing to see people I've known for years, friends, family members, coworkers, say to me, yeah, I don't believe in God either. But it also opened my eyes to a lot of the hardship that I had been sheltered from growing up. My grandmother, of course, had told me some amazing stories about raising 5 atheist children in the 50s and 60s, but I really thought that we moved past a lot of that kind of discrimination. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, a rather shy young woman, and she told me about how when she was sick and in the hospital, she mentioned to her parents that she might not believe in God, and they immediately threatened to disown her. She, being scared of being abandoned at such a difficult time in her life, recanted. But her views didn't change. She just remained afraid to voice them until I was telling her about my job at the Secular Coalition, and she realized that she wasn't alone. And she's not alone. The non-theistic movement is growing and large. Surveys say that between 16 and 19% of Americans don't have a religious affiliation. That's more than the Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and Mormon populations in the United States combined. 4% specifically identify as either atheist or agnostic. That makes us the largest non-Christian group in the United States. But we're still one of the most reviled groups in the United States. Our member organizations and the other organizations that work on these issues do an excellent job of building communities, raising awareness, and fighting back against the discrimination that we see. The Secular Coalition for America has a very specific role within the movement. Our job is to protect and strengthen the secular character of our government as the best guarantee of freedom for all, and to increase the visibility and respect for non-theists, particularly in government. 55% of Americans, both religious and non-religious, say that our political leaders should not base their decisions on religion. The Secular Coalition represents secular Americans in our nation's capital, and increasingly in state capitals around the country, which I'm going to talk more about in a little bit. We believe that secular values are American values. We believe that people should be able to be open about their atheism, even if they have to run for re-election. We are a nonprofit lobbying organization, and we try and be the voice for non-theists to politicians in DC. We are a coalition, We have 11 member organizations that span the atheist movement, from American Atheist to the Society of Humanistic Judaism. Our member organizations represent atheists and non-theists of all walks of life. They include the Military Alliance of Atheists and Freethinkers, which fights for the rights of non-theists in our nation's armed forces. They include the Humanists, who advance the cause of humanism in the Unitarian Universalist denomination. And they include the Secular Student Alliance and Camp Quest, who support our nation's young people and children who are non-theists and the children of non-theistic parents. We also have over 70 endorsing organizations. Those are organizations that are not necessarily national, like our member organizations, but who support our mission. If you have a local group that are interested in becoming an endorsing organization, you can sign up on our website. These groups, our member groups, the endorsing organizations, are out there every day. They're building communities, they're protecting our rights through the legal system, they're providing a space for discussion and thought. They're protecting us from discrimination, and they're providing us with a sense of a place to belong. And we are talking to the politicians on the Hill. It isn't easy. The climate in Washington, D.C. is not particularly welcoming to non-theists. There is only one openly non-theistic member of Congress at the moment, Pete Stark of California. There is a candidate in Arizona who is running who is openly non-theist, but she hasn't won yet. So for right now, there's only one up on the Hill. There are dozens of other politicians who behind closed doors will say that they don't have a God belief, but they're afraid to say so publicly for fear of losing the support of their voters, or in some cases, their moms. I've talked to congressional staff who are themselves non-theists, or who are very supportive of our cause, and who are working to get their bosses to recognize and to respect us, but they're swimming against a tide of increased religious grandstanding in Washington, D.C. There are over 200 organizations lobbying on behalf of religious groups in D.C. There's only 3 lobbying on behalf of non-theists: American Humanist Association, the Center for Inquiry, and us. Over $100 million are spent lobbying for religious groups. Our budgets are much, much smaller. And we're under attack. I think a good example of this happened at the conventions just a few weeks ago. The Republican platform and the rhetoric at the Republican convention were simply atrocious on a church-state separation issue. But to some degree, that was as expected, unfortunately. In some ways, I was almost more upset by what happened in the Democratic convention. Now, the Democratic platform had a lengthy section on the role of faith in government, which included language that very much sounded like support for the faith-based initiative program, which is very problematic because it gives government dollars to faith-based organizations without requiring them to follow the same rules. But for the first time in 20 years, the word God did not appear in the Democratic Party platform. And then, in a voice vote so controversial that it had to be repeated twice, and even then it was rather dubious as to if it passed, they added the phrase, God-given potential, into the platform. Now, if they just put this into start with, we would have been like, well, this has been what's happening for the past 20 years. But the choice to go ahead and put it in afterwards was clearly an attempt to cater to those who were threatened by the idea of the separation of government and religion. And it was a slap in the face to all of us who don't believe that our potential comes from God. We see this over and over. Religious groups pushing for exemptions to the law that the rest of us don't have, pushing for governmental rules that support their worldview. We saw earlier this year what should have been a political debate over the role of government in providing and mandating healthcare services become an argument over religious liberty. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the politicians who supported them attempted to say that their religious freedom, as guaranteed under the First Amendment, meant that not 1 cent of their money should go to a program that they disagreed with, the contraception mandate. This is a little absurd. Our tax dollars go to things that we disagree with all the time. This is despite the fact that the contraception mandate did not actually apply to houses of worship. If you were actually a church, you didn't have to do this. It did apply to some organizations that were religiously affiliated, such as Catholic churches, Catholic hospitals or schools. This is despite the fact that many of the employees of that organization, many of the individuals employed there, did not themselves have a religious opposition to birth control. In fact, 98% of Catholic women who are sexually active will take birth control at some point in their lives. Their own parishioners don't agree that it's evil. And yet they tried to say that because they disagree with this, their employees should be denied this coverage. That their organizational religious beliefs overrode the individual liberty and freedom of their employees. And they wanted the government to endorse this view. I think that this is an attempt to redefine religious freedom. And it's one of the core battles that we're fighting today. As I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you, the United States was founded as a secular democracy. Freedom of religion and the prevention of the government establishing religion is guaranteed in our First Amendment. Many of our founding fathers had non-theistic leanings. In the Treaty of Tripoli, passed unanimously by the United States Senate in 1797, it says very explicitly that the United States was not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. And yet the bishops and the politicians who support them don't believe this. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to see tax dollars and support go to their projects, which are religiously based, but they don't want to follow the same hiring rules the rest of us have to follow. They don't want to follow the same healthcare rules. They don't want to have to follow the same reporting requirements that all other nonprofits have to follow. And when we say that this isn't fair, that this isn't right, they cry that we're tromping on their religious freedom. They don't see a problem with tromping on the religious freedom and disrespecting those who don't agree with them. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not against religion. I don't want to trample upon the rights of people who don't agree with me either. And, you know, we can get some good work done with some religious people. But I'm told that 2012 is the year of the Bible here in Pennsylvania. That resolution passed the House of Representatives as a non-controversial resolution with 0 no votes. The supporters of this resolution said that we're in troubling times and we need to look to the Bible as a source of wisdom and inspiration. We are in troubling times, but as I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you, their sole source of wisdom isn't the Bible. You can, in fact, be good without God. I'm also told that there is an attempt to make 2012 the year of religious diversity in Pennsylvania. While this measure isn't perfect, it does at least make an attempt to recognize the diversity of viewpoints and to specifically recognize non-theists. That measure has been sitting in committee since June. I think it's a sad state when a year of the Bible resolution passes with 0 no votes, but a resolution recognizing our religious diversity is too controversial to get out of committee. There are lawmakers who do understand that their role is to represent all the people and not just base their decisions on their religion. Last year, 4 Republicans in the New York State Senate voted in favor of same-sex marriage. One of them, Mark Rosati, said in his floor comments, "I am not just here as a senator who is Catholic." He went on to say that he needed to make his decision on this issue based on his background as an attorney and based on reason. He voted yes for same-sex marriage, despite the fact that his Catholic beliefs and his Catholic upbringing told him that it was wrong. He did his duty as a lawmaker to represent all of his constituents, not just those who agree with his religious views. We need more lawmakers like that, who are willing to set aside their religious beliefs in order to do what's best for us all. And we need to fight back. The Secular Coalition for America focuses on 7 areas where we see the most egregious religious grandstanding and pushes for religious exemptions to laws. They are health and safety, education, tax policy, discrimination, the military, government actions, and international aid and foreign relations. Some of the examples of the type of problems we see in these areas are exemptions to medical laws and pushes to define what is a legal medical procedure based on religious views. Unsound health and science curriculums being pushed into our public schools. Privileges being provided to the soldiers who participate in religious exercises. Tax subsidies and exemptions that cost the government $71 billion for religious groups. And government-issued marriage licenses being based on religious dogma. We believe believe in an America where laws are based on our common rights and based on science. Now, individuals can believe what they want, but government represents all of the people, and religion cannot be used as a justification to deny rights and services. And when our lawmakers make decisions that affect all of us, they need to make those decisions based on fact, not on theology. We don't want to see any exemptions to the law for religious organizations. Religious organizations need to be treated the same as everybody else. If they want to run a child care center or an adoption service, open a hospital or a homeless shelter, that's great. We need homeless shelters. But they can't disregard the regulations and laws that were put in place to protect all of us. And they're trying to do that. In Pennsylvania, there was a law that was brought before the legislature that would have relaxed restrictions on religiously based child care centers. Now, the actual law itself is pretty complex, but the end result would have been that children in religiously based child care centers would not have had the same protections as children in other child care centers. And this is obviously bad for our children. Fortunately, this bill was killed in committee this past Tuesday. But many states have situations where religiously based child care centers have laxer regulations than non-religious child care centers. And this is obviously something that can't continue. We also want to see no financial privileging for religious organizations. Religious organizations should have the same status as everybody else. They should have to follow the same reporting requirements that other nonprofits have to follow. Secular Coalition for America is a nonprofit. I fill out a bunch of paperwork every year for the IRS to say that we are spending the money our donors give us wisely and that we are doing actual nonprofit-y things. Churches don't have to do that. We also want to see no tax exemptions for churches or clergy members that other people don't get. And finally, if religious groups want to receive tax money to support their programs, then they need to follow the same rules and regulations. They can't say that they can discriminate in hiring simply because they're a religious group. We want to see no endorsement of a religious worldview. There's a lot of God talk going around. In God we trust, under God. Our government needs to emphasize secular nature, and that means that they should have no statement that includes reference to God, no official statement. And when politicians are talking about the diversity of the American belief system, they need to recognize non-theists. Now again, politicians can hold their own beliefs, but the place for demonstration of faith is not on the money and the motto that we all share. Secular government, our government is secular, and non-theists should not be excluded. Now, if you've been watching the news or really paying attention at all, you'll know that this is not going to be easy to achieve. It's not going to happen tomorrow, and we can't do it alone. We need everybody who believes in a more secular America to stand up and be counted. We need to let them know that we won't be pushed aside. Our staff in DC are monitoring very closely what Congress and the White House are doing. If a bill comes up that would push back the cause of a more secular America, we react. We also work to make sure that those kind of bills don't come up in the first place. For example, there's a bill on the Hill right now that would require background checks for employees of child care centers. Right now, this bill has no exemptions for religious organizations. But bills like this are a prime target for legislatures who want to do some grandstanding on their support for religious freedom. So we're carefully watching that bill to make sure that this type of exemption doesn't make it in, and so we can fight back if it does. If we're successful, this will probably be the last you hear of that bill. Our work doesn't always make the news. It also doesn't always result in the bill being stopped or the amendment being stripped. Politics is a long game, and we've got to get them thinking. We've got to raise awareness of the non-theistic community. On Monday, we're having our first ever congressional briefing. It's on the state of secular America, and we've invited all the representatives, senators, and their staff to come hear 3 distinguished speakers talk about the history and current status of secular America, and as well as how government can do a better job of protecting our rights as non-theists. Our speakers are Professor Ira Lupu of George Washington University, David Miosi of the American Humanist Association, and Greg Epstein of the Humanist Chaplaincy at Harvard. And they're going to have a chance to talk directly to congressional staff and representatives. This is the first of many Hill briefings that we hope to have. And if you're curious as to how it goes, send me an email on Tuesday and I'll let you know. We also work to sound the alarm when there's problematic legislation that appears. Earlier this week, we denounced a House resolution that reaffirmed the importance of religion in the lives of US citizens and made reference to our Judeo-Christian heritage. We're very hopeful that this resolution won't even make it out of committee. The committee that it's going through has a lot of very strong supporters of the separation of church and state. We need to change the tone of the conversation and bring up issues that aren't even being talked about right now. We hope to bring legislation to both the House and the Senate that would repeal tax privileges that are provided to churches and religious organizations that aren't provided to secular nonprofits. Now, do I think this is going to pass next year? Probably not. As I said before, it's a long game. But we need to get the government talking about the cost of religion to the government and to the average taxpayer. We need to continue the conversation about the problematic faith-based initiatives program, which I mentioned before, allows religious organizations receiving government money to discriminate based on religion when they're hiring. We also need to continue the conversation and continue to frame the debate about religious refusal. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, sort of in the context of the Health and Human Services contraception mandate, but that's not the only place we're seeing it. We're seeing it in pharmacists refusing to fill legal prescriptions because their religion says that they're problematic. We see it in clerks of the court refusing to perform legal marriages and their religion saying that's okay. I can't emphasize this enough. This is a faulty definition of religious liberty that they're trying to promote. And the law is on our side in this case. The Supreme Court has found this to be a faulty definition of religious liberty. In its 1878 case, Reynolds versus the United States, the Supreme Court took up the question of if religiously based actions overruled the laws. And what they said was, can a man excuse his practices to the contrary because of his religious belief? To permit this would be to make professed doctrines of religious belief superior to the law of the land, and in effect permit every citizen to become a law unto himself. Government could exist in name only in such circumstances. The Supreme Court was clear. Religious belief does not override the law. And they've reaffirmed this decision time and time again since then. But a lot of people need to be reminded of that. We try and help let you know what your elected officials are up to so that you can help us remind them of that. We issue action alerts when there's a topic coming up that you can help us with to help mobilize our supporters and help get the word out there. We also do a congressional scorecard every year. This scorecard looks at the votes of all of the representatives and says how they voted on issues of importance to secular Americans. Fortunately, in 2011, only 17 representatives received an A grade. Pennsylvania, 1 representative received an A grade. Over half of the 435 representatives in Congress received an F. But we did see secular Americans take this scorecard to town hall meetings and hold their representatives accountable for their votes. In this election year, we're also putting out a presidential scorecard. This looks at the public statements of the presidential candidates and sees how they stand on issues of importance to secular Americans. We put out an initial scorecard in December that looked at the stance of the primary candidates. Within the next few weeks, our scorecard will come out that looks at the stances of Libertarian candidate Barry Johnson, Democratic candidate Barack Obama, Republican candidate Mitt Romney, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein. But I'd save the best thing for last. I think it's the most important thing we're working on right now, and I think it's one of the things that's going to be most exciting for everyone. We are moving forward swiftly with our 50-state program. Now, our 50-state program, the chapters that we create, are unlike any other state-level secular nonprofit. They are set up for the exclusive purpose of bringing together individuals and organizations to lobby their representatives. We try and provide the support and resources that are needed so that non-theists in the states can be an effective voice for secularism. Our goal is to have chapters in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. We have 2 already, an affiliate in Arizona and a chapter in Colorado. And tomorrow at 3:45, we're going to be signing the agreement to make Pennsylvania our 3rd official state chapter. One of the main ways that we organize for these state chapters is we have a call once a month. These calls are open to anyone who wants to participate, and it's where we can talk about the actions and activities we want to participate in to further the cause of secularism in government, and in addition, where we can identify legislation that we want to work for or against. The next call for Pennsylvania is at 2 p.m. on Tuesday the 2nd, so it's like 3 days from now. You can find out the number and information about it on our website. I'm guessing that most of you here are from Pennsylvania, but if you're not, we will have had organizing calls for all 50 states and DC and Puerto Rico by the end of October. So if you're not from Pennsylvania, you want to get involved in this, do go to our website and see when the call for your state's going to be. Our state chapters are going to provide training and resources for you guys so that you can learn how to more effectively lobby and that you can have the resources you need, the skills and support to be an effective voice for non-theists in your state legislatures. We're also going to help and work on tracking bills with the secular leaders in your state so that next time someone proposes to make it the year of the Bible, we can catch it before it gets shoved into a package of non-controversial resolutions. And we're going to need your help on the federal level as well. After all, your senator is going to listen much more closely to a Pennsylvania voter than they're going to listen to me. I really think that the 50-state program is the most important thing that we're doing right now. The most egregious violations of church-state separation, the biggest push, isn't happening in Washington, D.C. It's happening in Richmond, Virginia. It's happening in Phoenix, Arizona. It's happening in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And it spreads. It spreads from state to state. In 1995, only one state, Utah, had a law or a regulation banning same-sex marriage. Less than 10 years later, in 2004, 38 states had similar laws or regulations. We see this over and over and over again. A problematic law or a bad piece of legislation pops up in one state, and we see it 6 months, a year, 3 years later in another state. And the next thing you know, half the states in the nation have laws like that, and it's become part of our national conversation. The work that your state chapter does here in Pennsylvania is not only going to protect your rights as non-theists in Pennsylvania, but it's going to help protect the rights of non-theists all over the country. And who knows, maybe we can turn the tables. Maybe we can get positive legislation that supports our secular government and protects the rights of non-theists to spread from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to Phoenix, Arizona, to Richmond, Virginia, to Washington, D.C. Now, I just talked about a lot of different things that we're working on, a lot of actions, and as I said earlier, this is going to take a long time. These kinds of changes don't happen overnight, and we can't do it alone. We do need the support of everyone who believes that secular values are American values. So, how can you help? Well, I know a lot of you are very busy. If you don't have very much time, one of the things you can do is sign up for our newsletters and our mailing list. We'll send you action alerts when we see a piece of legislation that we need help with, when we need to fight back against the encroachment of religiosity into government, or we need to promote a law that will help protect our secular values. It will also get you our weekly newsletter and an invitation to our weekly call, which will update you on what's going on, both in the Secular Coalition and in other areas of the movement. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website, www.secular.org. There's also a sign-up sheet on one of the tables in the lobby. If you have a little bit more time to invest than just reading and responding to the occasional email, I strongly encourage you to get involved in the Pennsylvania chapter of the Secular Coalition. We're going to need volunteers to help out with all kinds of things to make this an effective group, an effective voice. If you're able to, please attend Tuesday's call at 2 p.m. If you're not able to, I recognize that some of you have jobs and things that keep you from being on the phone at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. We do post the recordings of the calls on our website, so you can go and listen to what the call was said, and you can also contact us that way to get involved, to let us know what you want to do to help, and to weigh in. And again, if you're not from Pennsylvania, you can find out when the calls for your state are on the website. I also want to say that we would not be here as an organization if it weren't for our member organizations. As I think I mentioned, the Secular Coalition has a much more limited mandate. Our member organizations are out there working on all kinds of issues and initiatives that we don't. If lobbying and laws aren't your thing, visit our website. You'll see a list of our member organizations. They represent a broad spectrum. I promise that at least one of them will speak to you and the way that you want to be involved in this movement. But the most important thing that you can do is stay informed and involved. Follow the issues that you care about, through us, through the media, through your own research. Let your representatives know your views. Rate them, call them, go to town hall meetings. Vote. The US is a democracy, which means that in theory we all have a voice. But our voice isn't heard unless we speak up. And now I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
If anyone has questions for her, just step up to the microphone here so everybody can hear the question.
What's the latest on your justification in the choice of an executive director?
So I've had the good fortune, as for those of you who don't know, our executive director, Edwina Rogers, is a Republican. She's been working with the Republican Party for over 20 years. What I have found working with Edwina, I've had the good fortune to work with her for the past few months, is that while we don't agree on everything, every issue that I've asked her about, every issue where we've discussed secular causes, she and I are on exactly the same page. You know, we were doing the grading for our scorecard, for our presidential scorecard that was coming out. And it was amazing because we were like going through the statements and she was like, well, that's clearly enough for things that were problematic, that we all saw as problematic. Also, Edwina is an amazing manager. She's an amazing executive director. She has so much knowledge about how to lobby and how to be an effective voice in Washington, and she's willing to put that effort into our cause. And so I really feel that choosing Edwina was a very good choice for the Secular Coalition. Being there every day over the past few months, I've seen how far we've come in just a few months. And when we talk about things like the 50-state program, moving forward with that, when we talk about our ability to go up on the Hill, she's been absolutely invaluable. And so while I understand that there was some controversy and some views of hers that people disagree with, I think that those problems are far, far outweighed by the advantages that she's brought to us. Anything else?